we made it to the last day, and I'm running on pretty little sleep. And I've not had very much time to really fully concentrate on this presentation, but it is very, it's an honor that I'm able to speak. And yeah, I had to tweak it a little bit because during the 5 days, you know, things sort of evolved. So I was up till 1 o'clock this morning. And I will just reiterate a little bit on what you said and give a little bit more background on myself, just to yeah, get myself flowing into this. So in 1991, as an exchange student from Switzerland, I met Richard and Bella Walker. They lived in an adobe home they had built themselves in Nelson, and being 16 years old, I had never put any thought into how we build homes. But when I stepped into their home, it was love at first sight. And it is a love so deep that it has totally determined the course of my life ever since. So I went back to Switzerland as a 16-year-old and I said, I want to become a nurse builder. And back then, there was not much in formal training. And I was told I should do something proper before. So I studied architecture at the Federal Technical University for 2 years, but I just felt like a fish out of water. Or maybe I should say more like a mole on a scuba course. So I decided to enroll in a year-long course in building biology and building ecology instead, and start gaining hands-on earth building experience by volunteering in building sites. And I enjoyed the BBE course very much because they really allowed me to focus on earth building in a very broad sense context. I could really delve into my interest and spend quite a lot of time researching. One of the things that intrigues me most about the building material earth is the deep response that people that come in contact with this building material often have. Experiences like you, Rose, described on your 5x5, or what Graham was touching upon last night. The questions I had probably were similar to what you, Amanda, were asking. It isn't just about the hardware, the structure, the workmanship. It's just as much about how we humans respond and how it impacts us. I graduated from the BBE course writing a paper on earth building and health. I looked at measurable things like the health effects of the indoor climate, and more subtle things like the effects of reflexology massage you get when you stomp mud or knead mud. Earth as a natural remedy in form of mud baths, as poultices, topical applications, or even ingested. The use of clay sculpture in art therapy, occupational therapy for people with special needs, or the effects of colors on our mood. The earthen colors are very soothing and speak to us. What it means to create connection and community through shared creativity, what Rosa was talking about yesterday. And even on a more spiritual note, I looked at mythology, at creation myths, and it is very interesting that many cultures have these stories of life starting in the mud. So I will not go into this much further. 20 years have passed and I still haven't translated it into English. But let's just say that it was confirmed to me that Earth, without a doubt, is really good for our health. Not just our physical health, but also our mental, our emotional, and even our spiritual health. And in being healthier, in healing ourselves, we can also heal the planet, which in turn makes us even healthier, so it is an upward spiral. So fast forward a few years, I gained a lot of practical skills and I had the opportunity to buy an existing mud brickyard in Nelson. I went into this pretty green but super keen. The mud stuff was the fun part. Learning how to run my own business and standing my ground in a male-dominated building industry was involved with a bit of a journey for me. Through my business Solid Earth, I have been involved in well over 100 projects to date, ranging from pizza ovens to full homes. And I adjust to what work is available So I've been very fortunate to have a very wide range of projects, and there never has been a dull moment. I thought I'd share a short video clip with you to start off with, so that you can see what makes up the building blocks of our business and what we get up to in Nelson. I came in and it felt cave-like in a way, but the walls were really light and soft looking, and I had never seen anything like it before, so I just started touching the walls. And if you see an earth wall or surface, a lot of people do that. I'm Verena and I'm an earth builder. We build houses with mud bricks. Every region of the world has developed their own techniques, but it's what connects us to where we stand, you know, the ground, and what we can use to build our own shelter. And I just love the fact that people have always been doing that, and then I followed in that tradition of just being self-sufficient when it comes to housing. You don't have to work with a whole lot of toxic materials, and you don't create a whole lot of waste, and you don't use a whole lot of resources, and you can do it locally, and that's very cool. And this is where we thought they were taking a still photo. They're not so naughty dog anymore. Right. Cool. This was made by some young people that traveled around New Zealand, and they made very short video clips about change makers. So I was very fortunate that they thought I was on that list. Thank you, guys. So this is where some of the blocks ended up. I was already mentioning this house in Methven, and I was actually looking for that other photo, so I found that those were the bricklayers on that home. It is an interesting owner-builder story, but not one to be told today. My passion for earth roots in the knowledge of earth brings healing. My focus has always been to make that accessible to as many people as possible, without making a distinction between whether they're sold on the idea of natural building or they want to build a conventional home. So, in actual fact, I do focus on the ledger with my marketing, because I feel that if I work on conventional building sites, I can put many more people in contact with this material, people that would maybe not have heard about it before. I'm talking about tradespeople, you know, all sorts of trades come, and usually the response is very positive, and I can educate them in a gentle way. There's a dire need to renovate existing damp and cold buildings and provide simple solutions to people that live in those buildings that often don't have much money. At least in this country, a lot of those buildings are timber frame buildings. So that's why I want to concentrate on earthen components in timber frame buildings. Someone mentioned a couple of days ago that we need to become better at selling the idea of using natural materials. I couldn't quite remember who it was, but I do agree. And I'm not talking about greenwash BS. Personally, I don't have a problem meeting people where they are and educating them in a gentle way. And I have found that the best advertisement you can have is to have a great service and really high standards. So our products you can fully guarantee and get testimonials from really happy customers. So we need to understand that we are all in this as a team. We need the customers, the designers, the engineers, the researchers, the manufacturers and the builders. And there needs to be open communication, respect, trust and sharing between all involved. This conference gives me great hope that collaboration will grow worldwide. But we need to make a commitment to take this out of the world, into the world and beyond our natural building bubble. And so my presentation is designed as a sales pitch, primarily addressing designers and homeowners. It has evolved from a presentation I gave at a events conference a few years ago, and I would like to share it with you to contribute to this discussion of marketing, how we market natural buildings to the mainstream, and how we as tradespeople and suppliers, what we need to provide to establish a trusting relationship with designers, homeowners, and those interested in learning. I did have a brief introduction to earth building at the start for people that don't know anything about earth building, but I have skipped that. Since you guys are of the species of Homo edifex naturalis, aka natural building people, I do welcome constructive criticism, so if you want to tell me anything I could improve about the presentation, please tell me. And I will skip over certain parts, so I will not present it the way I would present it to people that don't know anything about it, but yeah, let's dive into it. So, by earthen components in timber frame buildings, I primarily mean earthen plasters and adobe feature walls. Earthen plasters you have encountered in many different ways outside of the workshop area, and it has been such a pleasure to work with you all on doing natural plasters. I am very passionate about earthen plasters. They just excite me very much because there's so much creative expression and so many ways of doing things and achieving really stunning results. But just to recapitulate, go back to what it is in case you missed and you were somewhere else those 5 days stuck in here. It's basically mixing clay and sand and fiber and optional other additives as fiber, crushed glass, mica, food grade binders, and so forth. And you can go over any possible substrate, plasterboard, plywood, fiber cement board, concrete blocks, masonry, you name it.
You must one.
Yeah, carpet! Carpet! I didn't want to steal your show with that one. Carpet, awesome carpet, yeah. For the Adobe veneer feature walls, the way I do it is, and we've put quite a lot of development into this, and there will be also more research going into it shortly from a structural point of view. But it basically is making mud bricks from just clay, the way you dig it out, and a little bit of straw, sun-baking those bricks, and then the dimensions are 150 millimeters, give or take. And these bricks are not load-bearing, they get tied back to the timber frame with brick ties and positive connections screwed to brick ties into the frame and nailed into the brick. And you can install these walls just following the timber frame standards. The system will also be incorporated in the revised earth building standards, but basically what you need to make sure of is that you stay below 220 kilograms per square meter for the loading of the timber frame. And if you go above that, or if you have it on two sides of your timber frame, it needs to be engineered. So this is the detail. This one here is the exterior wall. You see the exterior of the, just the cladding of your choice, insulation, and then the interior brick veneer. So it is not a cladding, it is something that gets added to the inside of your home as thermal mass. And if that's an exterior wall, it needs to be insulated, obviously. And also the corners need to be insulated, not like what I've got out there. Or you have it on an internal wall, and you can go all the way up, or you can have a capping and have a wall that just goes partially up, and you have a feature or a ledge or something up there. There's a bit of weight in these walls, so you need to think about footings. But all in all, it's a very simple building method, and it is getting quite popular with people because it just gives you so much flexibility where you actually install these walls. So, if you are building or renovating, what could you be interested in? You could be interested in living in healthy living spaces, and I'm probably going to focus primarily on that. Healthy living spaces are made up of a lot of different things. We, as humans, don't have a very wide range of conditions we feel comfortable in, and temperature and humidity is one thing that affects us quite a lot, and we've got a very very small band of comfort there. So humidity regulation is probably the #1 thing with earth building that just blows all other arguments out of the water. You know, it just is if anything else, it's the ability of clay to regulate humidity. And just to give you an idea, not speaking scientifically at all, but if you look at the clay particles, they're like a huge stack of cards. And because of that structure, that plate structure, there is a huge surface area. So depending on your clay, imagine 1 spoon of clay can have a surface area as big as a football field. That's huge. And because of this huge surface area, there's a lot of area that can absorb moisture out of the air and then release it again. And when I started with solid earth, since then there has really been a shift, because in the beginning I had a lot of people say, oh, I want mud bricks because of the looks, can we have them on the outside of the building? Oh, I just want them for looks, can we have them as a garden wall? And yes and no, you know, there are limitations to having them on the exterior. You need constructive protection, good hat and so forth, but there's no limitations to having them on the inside of your home, and they basically are just advantages to them. So I really try to educate people that incorporating clay into your living area is a really good idea, primarily because of the regulation, because they regulate humidity. And we have got a problem here with things being a bit too damp sometimes, like there's mildew problems and so forth. In other countries in Europe, there's a problem with sometimes in winter it gets a little bit too dry and people have got problems with their mucous membranes. And there too, the clay regulates the humidity, because all it does is it takes out the humidity peaks that happen in a building from living in it, cooking, showering and so forth, absorbs and then releases the moisture when that drops off. So just to give you an idea, a lot of porous building materials do this, including the carpets on your floor. They do that a lot. I haven't put that on the list there, but it gives you an idea that where mud, you know, a high clay content building material stands as compared to other porous building materials. And here you obviously see that if you had a mud brick made of clay material, it would do much more than just an earth plaster. And obviously you're looking at these processes over time, so over a 24-hour period there's only a certain amount of thickness of the wall that is active. Over a longer period of time you're looking at the bigger depth of the wall. So, and it also depends on your total surface area. So I'm not saying don't do earth plasters for regulating humidity, you just might have to install more of them. And hand in hand with that prevention, or with that regulation of humidity, goes the prevention of mold, which is really, really important from a health perspective. I'm not going to go into the health effects of mold, I'm sure you are very aware of it, but if you're interested in seeing something a little bit shocking and quite disturbing, check out the Moldy movie. There is a lot of mold, and we are exposed to a lot of mold in our homes that we don't even think could be there. And especially in places where there might have been floods, which could increase with climate change. It's something to really watch out for, and also on our food and so forth. So if you're interested, check that movie out, and there's a lot of resources that are on that website too. The other thing with clay, it is just 100% natural. There's no VOCs, volatile organic compounds. There's no smell to it. In actual fact, it binds smells. So VOCs are interesting because they also come from natural materials, and some people react quite strongly to VOCs. So you can have a natural timber. Certain people are allergic to pinings out of pine or macrocarpa or remo, and just because something is natural, or maybe the something is natural doesn't mean it isn't toxic. Logical, right? There's toxic plants, and so what I really like about clay is that there's not zero VOCs. And it does find smell, so again that big surface area of the clay particles also exchanges smell molecules and clears the air, which is pretty cool. This is something I try to, it gets repeated, and I know it from personal experience, but I have tried to research and show, you know, how it happens, and I can't quite explain it yet. But there's no electrostatic charge on the walls, so you will find that airborne dust falls out and falls to the ground, and it's sort of like big positive ions that are healthy, so it's similar to when you're next to a mountain stream or something like that. So the air quality is also healthy on that level. And I'm a person that's quite sensitive to noise, so I find something that, you know, just the quietness of the room very soothing. There's a lot of mass there, so good insulating, and also shielding from electromagnetic fields. So, all in all, pretty healthy material to bring into your home, and I would encourage anyone, you know, with an existing building to try and think, how can I do that? Places where it makes particular sense would be your bedroom or your bathroom, away from splash areas, but also places, obviously, where the sun hits and where it can absorb heat. And we'll go into that a little bit later on. Yes, so we're touching on passive solar heating. I'm not going to talk too much about that because you guys are all versed with that, but these components make a lot of sense, obviously, where the sun hits them or where you have a space heater where they can absorb heat and then slowly release the heat at night. As designers and homeowners, you're probably very interested in the look. And this is something that I have also tried to, you know, I have to try to dispel certain myths about earth building. And one of them is that they have to look a certain way. They have to look organic or hobbit, homish, or whatever. They don't. They can look however you want them to look. And that's the beauty of it. They can be totally contemporary, or very rustic, or you can go to town expressing yourself creatively with clay colors, or engraving, or adding relief, like building the wall up with clay. And then, last but not least, if you do care about the planet, it's a pretty sustainable building material. It ticks all the boxes for me. I'm quite interested in, you know, the whole thing about embodied energy, obviously, but yeah, it's 100% natural, it's abundantly available, you don't really need to mine it, you can often just get it from where you dug out foundations or where roads have been excavated or maintained. It's got a very low carbon footprint, especially if you source it locally, and it is zero waste if it is not stabilized. So this is the reason why, two reasons why I don't like adding cement to earth building materials, is because I would like to keep it totally breathable. And if you start adding cement, it's still porous, it's still breathable to a certain degree, but it goes right down. Like, it's not the same as an unstabilized material. And the other thing is you can not reverse the process. You can crush it, but you can't re-wet it and reuse it. And I love that aspect of it. I love the reversibility of the process, because it means that I can go into a 150-year-old building and there's some broken bits and I can just re-wet them and form new bricks and fix the building with the original material, and there's no rubbish whatsoever. Yeah, or it also, you know, sort of keeps me flexible in my thinking, and think, you know, things are not set in stone, they're set in mud and you can change them. So, this is what you could be interested in, and I'm sure there's more. Then there's, I just thought I'd put a compilation together of frequently asked questions, and that could be the basis of a discussion. So how durable it is. These things I've presented are for interior use. I wouldn't use them as splashback areas necessarily unless you tailor them or oil them. I would only ever seal them with a breathable sealer and or vapor permeable paint, and they have got moderate impact resistance. They're easy to install, so earthen plasters can go on later after you have received building consent. You need some solid plastering skills, and you can either buy bought earthen plaster or you can develop your own plasters by sampling, so it can be very cheap. The mud brick veneer, for the bricks you need to certify them, you need to test them, so if you're interested in that, coming along to the materials testing session this afternoon. They need to be installed in accordance with the building code, and they can be installed by owner builders, no worries at all. And the maintenance is easy. Again, keep the surface breathable, that's the most important part for me, and this is actually something that I wanted to touch on. And I've put these prices in there, our prices, but I'm not putting them in to show you that this is how much it costs, it might change or whatever. But what I would like to talk about is that, the accountability in us tradespeople, giving people an exact price so that they know what they're in for. And then, for me, it's sort of a win-win situation, because it creates a situation where we don't have bad surprises, and often people fall out over costs. And then there's bad blood, and like something that was a very positive experience can turn very sour. So we strive to having fixed prices. And I'm not saying that everyone should do that, but we found that to be quite good in building trust and how do you say that? So when you see through things.
A veneer wall.
Yes. Yes. So I'm talking about plasters and veneer. So yeah, that's about it. And we don't want to compete with conventional building materials, but we try and put the benchmark at the same level, so that we can be taken seriously in just normal building situations. And I think that it has been a slow and hard road to that, but it's getting more accepted. And having seen the building officials here was really like my highlight, really, how they responded to it. So thank you so much for everything you do. Hiaka!
So we've got time for a few questions, if anybody has them. No questions, Verena? That means that we're back to our oh no, Barbara's she's going to grill you.
No, I'm not going to grill you. I'm really, really supportive of what you're doing, Verena. It's fantastic. I just wanted to know how many people are in your workforce, and how do they gain the skills that they require to work with you?
Okay, so it is pretty much, we have tried to have 2 of us full time, and the workload has fluctuated a lot, so that was very hard for us to maintain full time. But then when we are up, when we have projects, we employ up to 6 people at any given time. And the way that I train them is I take them along and I just teach them on site. So I'm a little bit picky, which projects I try to build that up. I usually take them through my workshops first, and then we can do stuff at my place, and then I take them to the easier building sites. But I pay people pretty much straight up. What I found quite good is to check people out first if they are keen and willing to learn, and if they fit into the team, and they come and volunteer for a little while. But very soon I will turn them into employed people, like just not fixed employment, but on a project basis, and that again creates that mutual commitment really.
Okay. Oh, one more question.
And just, some just stay for a project, but some have been with us, like Earl has been with us for a number of years, just not full time. And the lady that was making the bricks with me has been with me for 12 years. And yeah, probably trying to have at least half women. And when we started, we both had small babies. She had a baby, and my kids were 2 and 4.
What happens if you put earth plaster in a building that already has mould inside?
If you have a really bad mold problem, you have to sort it out. But if it's a little bit, obviously, what you were saying, Sven, about the carpet, you would not try and get a moldy carpet, but the earth does seal stuff in. But it can travel in your plasterboard and go into your ceilings and be everywhere in the sport. So if you have a bad problem, you need to get it sorted out. And I've actually written a blog on after, I watched the movie Moldy, and then it sort of brought back all these things that I had thought about during the BBE course, and I distilled it into a blog, so that's on the earthbuildingschool.com website.
Okay, well, please join me in thanking Verena.